Hi, my name is Imelda Jimenez Lamar, and I'm a product photography coach helping handmade sellers learn how to shoot product photos that sell online. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about backgrounds because backgrounds is often something I think a lot of Etsy sellers tend to overlook at the beginning of their journey of selling online, right? You hear a lot about lighting, and so obviously lighting is something that you should really focus on improving and getting the best it can be, but backgrounds are up there with lighting. It can really make or break your product photos. So if you're somebody who's been thinking about changing up your background or wondering if your background is not working for your business, I'm going to share with you some tips to keep in mind about what backgrounds you should be using and which ones you shouldn't be using. So first off, what's the big deal about a background? Your background is meant to be in the background of your product photo. It's meant to complement your product. It's meant to help your product stand out and make your product shine, right? But it's supposed to be in the background, so it's just kind of chilling there, right? It's something you're not really paying attention to. So it's really important that you do a little bit of thinking about what your product is, what your brand is, and how you want your product photos to look. So first off, a couple of things I see that you shouldn't be doing when it comes to selecting your backgrounds for your product photos. So first off, using a really busy textured background. So you might see this with like wood or like marble or fabric. Those types of backgrounds can be really problematic because the grain might be really busy. It may have like a really weird textured pattern going on, or it's just visually very busy, right? So not saying that it doesn't work, but really think about the type of texture and pattern that's going on and how that's going to look against your product, right? Because a background might look really great, but when you put it with your product, it might not look as good as it could be. So really keep that in mind. Piggybacking off that, having backgrounds that are not necessarily, like wood or, fabric and that kind of thing, but having backgrounds that are, outside or somewhere in your home, like on a shelf, backgrounds that have a lot going on. So if you're photographing your products outdoors, are there trees in the background? Is there a playground in the background? Are there people in the back? Like, what's going on behind your product? Because the more that's going on behind your product, the more likely it is going to create more visual distraction from your product. And it's the same thing if you're photographing your products indoors, if you're photographing in your kitchen, and in the background you can see your TV in your living room, you can see a pile of laundry. Like, those are the things that you really need to pay attention to. So when you are selecting a spot to photograph your products and you're not using like a paper background and you're using like natural elements that are going on in your world, think about what's going on behind your product. And one other thing I see that can be really challenging is that the background is the same color tone as your product. So I see this with I tend to see this more with like wooden textures, but this can happen like any kind of color. But when the background is so close to the color of the product that you're photographing, it can make it really hard to see your product. Like, it's not going to pop as much as if you were using a contrasting color like white, so for example. So this too can also be problematic if there's certain elements of your product that are similar to the color of the background you're using. So really keep in mind what color you're using to photograph your product. You might think, oh, it looks great because it's like the same, and it's like, no, it's not great. So think about a background that's going to really help your product pop and stand out and not blend in with the background. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind when you are selecting your backgrounds. I mean, white is a true go-to for many, many online sellers, right? And it's because it's simple, it's clean, like 99% of everything looks great against white, right? So it's easy. It's also one of those things that makes your listings more searchable in Google and for like Google ads and that type of thing if you're going down that road. So it's really simple, it's really clean, and you know, is something I strongly suggest. If you are looking to use like textured backgrounds, like I had mentioned, of like wood and like marble and fabric, really think about, does that make sense for your product and your brand? If so, think about the different textures and colors that would work best with your product, and just be really careful about, you know, those types of backgrounds. And then there's obviously color. I really like neutral colors, kind of like grays and light browns, tans, that type of thing, because it's just really clean and really nice, but it isn't white. So those are shades I really suggest using if you don't want to use white, but you don't want to use like a really colorful background. So yeah, those are a couple of really great options. But if you really want to go down the path of colored backgrounds like blues and reds and all that stuff, really make sure that it makes sense. If you're going to use those colors, I really suggest using a plain blue or plain red or plain. Don't select a background that's colored and has texture or has a pattern or something going on, because it's already going to be busy enough with just the color. But when you start adding textures and all that stuff, it can just be too much, right? Because again, it's standing out against your product. So make sure that whatever color you select makes the most sense with your product. Now, again, you have to think about, is it going to blend in with your product depending on what color your product is? So couple things to keep in mind, right? So those are a couple tips I hope you can, you know, keep in the back of your mind when you are selecting your backgrounds. Let me know in the comments, what kind of backgrounds do you use for your product photography? I'd love to know, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.